John G. Pennington, George Kell Motor Company, and have we got something to show you today? John G., we're on location here.
Man, we're north. We're up. It's a little cooler up here, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I noticed that.
We're about 3/4 of a mile north of the old George Kell Motor Company, which is still there.
Yes, sir.
But I can feel that cool breeze. Fall's on the way in it.
It does. Fall is coming.
Dee, we talked about what to do, and I said, hey, let's run out and let's just kind of, because we can't do much inside the building because you can see everything's going on here. This is the site of the new George Kell Motor Company. We're really excited about it. A lot of people have been asking us, when you think it's going to be open? When you going to be ready? Well, as you can see, it's dried in, so even if the weather gets bad, there are things that can go on. Here's something to think about. You can take the entire George Kell Motors current building, everything we've got, and put it in the shop.
Is that right?
Put it in the shop.
Is that right?
The whole office is up front. The show, everything we've got, you can put in the shop. And down the road, when we do another show, it might be a little quieter. We might do it on a Saturday morning or something, so we can go through and look at some stuff. But I just wanted to show you the expanse of this deal. There have been several other companies over in Wynn and others who built new buildings and did some things too, but it's not nearly as big as this building.
It's huge.
It's
no
big.
doubt.
It's big. And what's really going to be neat is when we get this done and our customers come and it's snowing and it's raining and it's nasty, they'll pull right up on the left side over here and they'll go in a covered place.
Ben, can you get a shot of that over there, maybe possibly?
That's the service department. There's old Catfish right there. Good customer,
hey,
good customer.
All right, Robert.
And that's the area where the customers will go in. They'll be greeted at the door by the service desk.
That's all right.
And you'll go in and then you'll be greeted by the service riders. They'll find out what you need and you'll go into a really, really nice new customer waiting area. It'll have its own TV, snack bar, and all that kind of stuff. It'll be really, really nice. And as I've told you before, Dee, I asked Dean to keep one big block of gravel and mud that we're all used to at the old place so that I can walk out there and step in it when I get lonesome. But it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be nice. And again, you don't get the true impact of how big this building's going to be till you get inside.
I just look at the guys behind us just standing there. People are just standing there, and I'm sure you can see those guys. And I mean, it's huge. I mean, the top of it's just huge. Hey, but the important thing is what a commitment that George Kell Motor Company has made to taking care of folks in Northeast, North Central Arkansas, and really throughout the Southeast, Southwest United States.
Absolutely right. And Newport is doing well. We're growing. Things are happening here. And that's all good and well, and we're so pleased about that. But the Jonesboro market, Craighead County, has exploded. And it used to be like, God, we love to do business with you, but you know, it takes an hour and something to get over there and all that. With the new freeway and with 226 Cash Road being done, right now it's 31 minutes.
That's
and
right.
then when that other part gets done, that'll take another 8 or 10 off. So it's going to be 25 minutes to leave. It'll take longer to go from the west side of Jonesboro over to Paragould than it will from Newport to Jonesboro.
Well, the thing that you have to do is when you're making this type of commitment here, I mean, you have to have business throughout. I mean, your number one goal is taking care of the folks in Newport and Jackson County, but you've got to go beyond that.
You have
to take care of buildings like this, to have nice buildings like this. You have to have that business.
And you being an old car man, you know this. When people come in and buy a $70,000 car, they really don't want to walk through mud and stuff like that. Now, our clientele, we have so many good old boys like me and you, and they're farmers, and they drive our trucks up here, and they really don't care.
Right.
But when their wives come up here and they've got on $250 Tory Burch shoes and stuff like that, they really don't like that gravel and mud that much. I can understand that.
Yes, sir.
State of the art, all new equipment, air-conditioned service department, everything is new, everything is state of the art, and the whole reason behind it is not to give ourselves an ego stroke, is to help the customer enjoy their service and their buying experience here at George Kell. That's what it's all about. And that's why Dean is spending the money that he is to make sure that the customers enjoy the entire experience from the time they pull up here to the time they leave. And when they come back for service, to enjoy that kind of thing too. So we're all excited about it. Shooting for the first of the year. We're getting into the fall of the year. It's going to start sleeting and snowing one of these days. I promise you it will. Someday
it's going to go.
And we'll be here after the first of the year and the new facilities. And we'll have a big grand opening, and we'll be announcing more and more as we go. Just wanted to kind of say, hey, take a look at where we are right now. It was a dirt lot, and now look what's coming up.
It was a field. I mean, amazing. It was just a field full of nothing, and now it's got a nice little field full of something.
And the whole thing is we'll be able to do a better job for those who want to buy a car or get a car service. That's what this whole thing's about.
Sure.
If it's not for that, no need to build it.
No need to build one at all.
Everybody stay tuned, drive out here on the weekends when you can, take a look at the progress being made, and be excited for George Kell Motors in Newport, just part of the growth of our town. We're looking forward to serving you in a brand new state-of-the-art place. And Dean cut the jacuzzi out of my office.
You need me to talk to him, see what I can do.
Yeah, you need to help me out, will you?
I say,
y'all go way back.
Jacuzzi.
Seriously though. keep an eye out. Stay tuned to George Kell Motors. We've got some exciting things. Going to have a lot more inventory. I think they said there's 400 parking spaces.
I was going to ask.
400 and something parking places. So we're going to have a lot more inventory. It'll be easy to walk around. You can see everything we've got. You can always go to georgekellmotors.com, but you can come out here and you won't have to walk in the mud.
John G., good to see you, my friend. As
See you,
always,
D-Black.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, you're my man. You're
Number
my man.
64 in your program, number 1 in your heart. John G.
All-state
Pennington.
linebacker.
John G. Pennington, George Kell Motors. Jackson's Funeral Home and the Jackson family have been serving our friends and neighbors in Jackson County during some of the most difficult times of their lives for nearly 60 years. As the third generation of this family to own and operate Jackson's Funeral Homes, Jan, Rhett, and Jerry consider it the highest honor to be chosen to care for you and your family during times of need. We believe the highest standard of care is achieved when people are given the tools needed to make the most informed decision for the benefit of their family. For us, there's no greater honor than to care for our friends and our neighbors in their time of need. The Jackson's Funeral Homes, the 1900 block of Malcolm Avenue in Newport, phone number 870-523-5822.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Remember When. I am Bud Black, and what a great privilege it is to have my friend and longtime friend, known him all of his life, it seems like. It seems like it's been 150 years. You're not that old.
Not
Jimmy
quite.
Cooper joins us. Hi, Coop. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, Bud. Good to be here. Good to be here.
Good to see you, sir. We want to just get on here and talk, and we enjoy getting folks who are from this area and been around here and grew up in this area and know a lot about it. That's what Remember When is all about.
Amen.
So Jim had talked to us about coming on the show, and I know he knows everybody, and most everybody knows him. And he's got some stories he might tell on you, so be careful out there. Get your ears ready just in case. So let's get started. I always ask folks, as you know, to start this program, where and when were you born?
I was born in a little community east of town called Johnstown.
Everybody knows where that is.
And I tell people now, since Governor Beebe was from Amigan, that I was born in the suburbs of Amigan.
Well, that's absolutely right. You know, you're just down the road from
Just down
Amigan.
the road, that's right. My family...
What year?
I was born in 1944.
Okay, all right.
But my family settled over there back in the 1800s. They came over from Tennessee and settled in Johnstown. The house I was born in fact, was built during the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And it had a big hallway down the center of it and had the bedrooms on one side, the living room, and the kitchen on the other side.
That's ironic. I'm watching, as we filmed Ken Burns' show on PBS, The Civil War, is being rerun, and it's quite a, if you've never seen it or never bought it, it's a 25-year-old film, but that's something about the Civil War. And, you know, there's some strange times going on, you know, in the Civil War. People were people. They were just like us today. We have a lot more conveniences than they had. But anyway, big house, and of course, it's long gone.
Oh, yeah, long gone. Tell you a story about it that I've heard all my life. I don't know if it's true or not, that the old gentleman that lived there had slaves during the Civil War. And the Union Army was coming down, and he had a lot of gold. And he took it down in the Cashier Bottoms and buried it. It's never been found. They say it's down there somewhere. But he would take he took a little colored boy with him the last time he went, and the little boy didn't come back. So they think he might have killed him and buried him on top of that gold to keep the rest of them from coming down there and finding him.
Okay, it's a good story.
I've heard it all my life. Don't know if it's true or not.
Well, that's true, but you do have some connection because, as you say, you had familiarity with the house and the owner.
Yeah.
Those stories that are passed down, those oral traditions, you know, it's just like the story Roots, which is probably the most famous story of oral tradition of people telling stories and finding them to be true.
Amen.
Going
That's
back
right.
and finding out about that. So anyway, you tell me about growing up.
Well, I grew up, we left Johnstown and moved to Murphy's Corner, which is out here on Stigall Road.
You did move up, didn't you?
Sure did.
Man, you get closer to town all the time.
I can remember when they got electricity out there.
Yeah.
I was probably 5 or 6 years old when they got electricity out there.
REA.
They wired our house, and an old gentleman by the name of Eddie Lewis. You remember Mr. Eddie?
No, I do
He
not.
drove school bus for years.
Okay, I do not,
But
unfortunately.
he lived there by us, and he and my dad wired our house.
Okay.
And they had those wires run across the ceiling and drop down, had a socket on the bottom of it, you know, and you pull the string. But But Mr. Eddie, they'd wire one and they'd hook it up and he'd stick his finger in it to see if it was hot or not. You know?
and your hair goes.
Yeah, he'd say, yeah, Austin, that was hot, you know. So, instead of, he couldn't have screwed a light bulb in
Well,
it.
I bet that was a revelation to a kid, you know.
It was. I
get
watched
some
them
juice
do it.
in the
Yeah,
house,
yeah.
you know.
Well, a lot of times they talk about now having 3 rooms and a bath. We had 3 rooms and a bath. We had an outdoor toilet, and that's. But
Well, when we talk about stories about like that, and kids today don't know what we're talking
don't know
about.
what we're
have
talking
no
about.
idea, and you tell things about like, hey, not too long ago, I can remember, when you picked up the phone, and went,
Yeah.
then I can remember when you went,
that's right.
and then
that's
I
right.
remember when you went, number please, and
Yeah.
you said 501, 880W please,
Yeah.
and just so things do change, but I guess convenience is for the better. Although in this,
Oh, it is,
this day and
yeah.
age, I complain because we don't do this. We don't talk to each other anymore. We sit there and do this all day long, and it's okay. And I guess people say, "Bud, why does that bother you?" It's just because I like conversation.
I do too.
I think you can learn more from conversation than you can ever type, and I can learn more in talking and listening to somebody than they can ever type to me.
Oh, that's right.
Full
That's right.
day. But, I want to know about people. That's why we do this show.
My dad, when we moved out there, he started farming, and he got in with a gentleman by the name of Buck Hurley.
No,
Buck owned the land,
Right.
and my dad farmed it for him. And back in 49 and 50 or 51, my dad farmed 1,500 acres, and that was a big farm back in those days. He had 15 tractors to farm 1,500 acres.
Wow.
And he paid his tractor drivers $4 a day. Mm-hmm. That was from daylight till dark.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a full 12-hour day at
yeah.
least. Yeah.
And then Dad got a job at Victor Metal. Tickled me to death. We got to move town when he got a job at Victor Metal.
Okay. Out of the farming.
Out of the
business.
farming, and I didn't have to pick or chop cotton anymore. And boy, I loved that. And then my mother got a job at Revere. So we were, boy, we were
Y'all, no
uptown.
pun
Yeah.
intended, y'all were in high cotton.
Yeah, we moved to the air base then, buddy.
You just keep advancing.
That's right. That's right. And then it wasn't long till we moved to Newport.
Okay.
And we lived on Congress, right up the street from Wardell Pennington. And Wardell was quite a man. We lost Wardell here not long ago.
Yeah,
But
great fella.
He was a wonderful man. And he kind of played with us kids over there. I was 12, 13 years old, and I was over there with a lot of my high school friends.
Speaking of which, who were your buddies?
Boyce Arnett was one of them. Don Darling was one of them.
I'm sorry. Don, I get you.
There was Buckshot Nicholson. There were several of them, and of course Buckshot lived out in the country, but he was one of the rich farmers. He'd come to town. But Buckshot and I run around together, grew up together. In fact, his mother worked at Revere with my mother back in those days.
Don, I think, let's see, no, it's Joyce that has the 50-year reunion.
Yeah,
She graduated
yeah.
in 65.
Yeah.
It's in October. My bunch has put together a big reunion, 67, 8, 9, and 70, October 9th and 10th. I think theirs was the next weekend after that. So
We had, in 12, we had our 50th reunion, 50th, and Tim Watson was our president, class president. Tim is a good friend of mine.
So you graduated in
62.
62,
Yeah.
okay.
And Tim called me, and back in school, I was pretty rowdy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Tim called me, and a lot of the graduates did not know that I had become a preacher. So they asked me to do the invocation at our reunion, and a lot of them were flabbergasted.
So they said, Cooper?
Yeah.
Cooper's going to do the prayer?
They had a little band playing, and this one friend of mine, lady friend, she said, "Come dance with me." And I said, "Sis, I hadn't danced in 20 years." And she said, "Well, come on." So I got out there and came back, and there was another lady there that was another religion. I'm not going to mention it.
Okay.
She said, "I didn't know preachers danced." I said, "Sis, I hadn't always been a preacher."
Yeah.
So,
Preachers dance, preachers sing.
Well, sure they do.
I
Sure
mean,
they do.
You
can imagine what church she was.
Preachers
from.
are human beings.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention, but
That's all right.
But it was awesome. I had a wonderful time and got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen in 50 years. You know.
And growing up, you were born in '44. Of course, you don't remember World War II. Do you remember when Harry Truman came to Newport?
Oh yeah, I remember.
You
I
were
didn't see
8
him.
years old.
Yeah, I was 8 or
whatever.
9, something like that. Yeah. But I didn't. I didn't see him. But
I was 2, almost 3. Of course, I wouldn't
Yeah,
remember it.
yeah.
So anyway.
I remember the first time Elvis came to town.
Ah.
1955.
Okay.
I was 11 years old.
Okay.
And he came in and he played down at the old armory, which is across the street from where the jail is now down there. And my sister, which is 7 years older than me, she was been 18, I guess. She took me down there. Cost $1 to get in there to see Elvis. And then he came out to Porky's Club and played that night. Of course, I didn't get to go to see that. I wasn't old enough. But.
That 54 and 55, that time frame when they were working on the Rock and Roll Highway,
Yeah.
as right before he really became super popular with a couple of big hit records. I think RCA bought his contract
Yeah.
from Sun, and all of a sudden, you know, you had some hit records, and the movie Love Me Tender comes out, and boy, there it just took off. And I mean, people who were saying, you know, if hey 14 months ago, this guy was at Porky's and the Silver Moon and the Armory, you know, playing for $1, and now look at this. Anyway, we're visiting with Jimmy Cooper. We're going to take a quick break here on Remember When. We'll be right back following this.
Jackson's Funeral Home and the Jackson family have been serving our friends and neighbors in Jackson County during some of the most difficult times of their lives for nearly 60 years. As the third generation of this family to own and operate Jackson's Funeral Homes, Jan, Rhett, and Jerry consider it the highest honor to be chosen to care for you and your family during times of need. We believe the highest standard of care is achieved when people are given the tools needed to make the most informed decision for the benefit of their family. For us, there's no greater honor than to care for our friends and our neighbors in their time of need. The Jackson's Funeral Homes, the 1900 block of Malcolm Avenue in Newport, phone number 870-523-5822.
Jimmy Cooper is our guest, and Jimmy has been around here forever and seen a lot of life in his 71 years, and has lots of stories, and we enjoy listening to them and talking about growing up outside of town. Elvis, we mentioned Elvis, and I know you have got some stories involving Elvis.
Yeah, I said earlier about him playing at the Armory, and I saw him when I was 11 or 12 years old. I don't remember. But anyway, the story is he came out to Porky's and played several times, Porky's Rooftop. And he had a 3-piece band, he and Scotty and Bill. And Porky was paying them $100 to come out and play on Saturday night. So one day Elvis told him, he said, Porky, we got to have more money. He said, there's 3 of us. We need at least $50 a piece. Porky said, boy, I can get Sonny Burgess that kind of money.
Scotty Moore and Bill Black. And
Bill
people
Black,
often
that's
ask
right,
me,
that's
say,
right.
now, Bill, was he related to you? And I said, no, I never met the man, but he could pick that bass.
Yeah,
you know?
but
I can get Sonny for
Porky said, I can get Sonny for
Sonny
that
has
kind
been on this program, as you know,
Yeah.
and has some great stories and talked about Sun Records and everything. You know, and then we advanced, talked about Conway Twitty. But what an institution Sonny Burgess is.
Yeah, he certainly is. And I saw Conway Twitty the last time he played at Bob King's club up there. I went up and saw him. And of course, Joe Lewis was from Newport.
And Jack Nance.
And Jack Nance.
And you know, those boys used to hang around sometimes when they were in town at Buddy Black's tire store.
Yeah, sure did.
And I got to know them, and it was pretty interesting, all of the stories. And there was a time or two after playing, I think, out at the 21 Club, the Silver Moon, whatever it was at the time, that Conway and the crew came over to our house and went downstairs to a party when Mom and Dad would have a party, an after party or whatever. And that was pretty fascinating. And Sonny reminded me, he said, yeah, Conway Twitty used to come down and buy tires from your dad.
Your dad,
I said,
yeah.
That's pretty neat.
I can remember when your dad had that tire store.
That is pretty neat indeed. Anyway, let's get back to Cup here.
Yeah.
Now, okay. Tell me some more. Let's see, where are we? We're going to high school, and we're going to graduate in 44.
No, I'm going to graduate in 62.
Oh, that's right. We're born in 44. Good Good.
Hey, I'm old, but I ain't that old, bud.
Who were the teachers, administrator? Who you remember?
Billy Wiggins was our principal.
Well, he had to be just getting started.
Buddy, what was his name? I had a senior moment right
Okay,
there.
that happens, you know. I lose train of thought.
He
all
was a
the
senior
time.
high principal, Buddy
Davis.
Davis.
Yeah. Okay.
And Mr. Wiggins was a junior high principal at that time. The whole time I went through school, Mr. Wiggins, I loved him. He was a fine man. Mm-hmm. And years later, after I graduated and got out in the world, I ran into him one day, and he said, "Cup, you remember that time I whipped you for something?" I said, "Mr. Wiggins, you whipped me every day. I expect to remember one of them." You know.
Buddy Davis.
Buddy Davis
had a daughter, Elaine, little bitty blonde hair, and she was my age. And in the second grade, 1957, I was madly in love with Elaine Davis.
Amen.
And then I found out that everybody else was
Was
madly
too.
in love with it too. It just wasn't me. So,
But I enjoyed going to school in a small school like Newport. I knew everybody, you know, all the people, and most of them knew me. Like I said earlier, I was a little bit rowdy in high school. I played sports. I played basketball and baseball, and played football one year, and it was too rough, buddy. I quit that.
it's a tough game.
But I played baseball and basketball and ran track, and just had a wonderful time.
But
Jack Bailey was a coach back then.
Oh man, great friend of our family.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack and Betty and their kids, Scott and Leanne.
Yeah.
We did something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in high school.
Yeah, I was in high school. Had a wonderful high school career in Newport. Dated a lot of girls.
Well, that's
You know, there
nice,
wasn't
yeah.
anything wrong with that. And we had some beautiful young ladies.
Did you ever did you guys not go steady with somebody, or did you?
Oh,
kinda play the field?
I let them all. You know, I was, believe it or not, I was a pretty nice looking guy back in high
You're
school.
gonna have to convince me.
I'll bring you a picture and show you, but no, I never did go
Well,
steady.
see, later on in the late '60s, we always had a steady.
Yeah,
it
I didn't
seemed
have a
like.
steady.
Now you would have a steady for 6 months, and then you
Well,
might have a
no, it
different
wouldn't be that
steady for
long.
6
About
months.
6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so-
Well, I do a couple of guys that were in my class for about
yeah.
6 days.
We had, I had a wonderful high school career. Like I said earlier, I graduated from here, but I went my junior year in a little town called Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Because your dad moved out
Yeah,
there.
my dad moved out there.
Why?
He worked for Victor Metal, and they opened a plant out there, and he went out and set the plant up. He was a foreman for them, and there was 2 or 3 men from Newport went out there and stayed a year or so, and he got ready to come back home, and they told him he couldn't. Well, that was the wrong thing to tell my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He loaded up and we came home. That's when he bought this service station down here. And then a year or so later, he was killed in an accident, you know, and
Yeah, a lot of folks may not know about that, and it may be tough to talk about still, but I want to talk about it because, first off, it's a good lesson for a lot of people, and I know he would want us to talk about it. Your dad was in the gas station business and had a gas can in the cab of the truck.
well,
with
the
him.
car. It's sitting in the
Okay.
front seat beside him. A lady called him from out the air base, and she had run out of gas. And it was about midnight. We stayed open till midnight.
So he's being a good Samaritan.
And he took her some gas out there, and when he got there, she was already gone. So he had started back.
With a
with
a can of gas.
Yeah, and he struck a match to light a cigarette, and it exploded, of course. And he lived, had third-degree burns on 90% of his body, and he lived 8 hours in that shape. And talked to me 30 minutes before he died. He said, "Son, don't ever carry gas in the car."
Good lesson.
And I never have
Yeah.
since 1964.
Right, and it's a good lesson.
yeah,
and,
it is.
and you know, and I even see people, you know, hauling gas around in the back of pickup trucks, and you know, you even wonder, say, you know, I mean, it could explode. I mean, gas doesn't just exactly just flame. Sometimes it can explode. So, you got to be very, very careful. But I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's a good lesson for a lot of folks, and I know your dad would want us to talk about it. And there are people out there that do remember.
Yeah,
But,
years later, not years later, a couple years later, my brother and I were running. We took the station over and were running it, and then we sold it. And I got in the heat and air business. I bought Cleety Pollard out. Cleety had moved to Jonesboro, and I bought him out, and I was in it a couple of years. And then I got in the funeral business. I went to work at Jackson's Funeral Home, worked there 10 years, moved out to Dillinger's and worked there 10 years. So I put 20 years in the funeral business, and I retired. And after I retired, God called me to preach. And I said, Lord, I'm too old. I don't need to be preaching, just starting a new job.
You, Mr. Rowdy,
Yeah.
of all time, or at least you say in the top 3 or 4, you know, of being rowdy, and who like to tip it a little bit,
Amen.
you know. And
Well, I'd got saved. I'd been saved for 20-some years before God called me to preach. I got saved in 1986, I believe it was 85 or 86.
tell us about
85.
that.
Well, it'll be 30 years this year, so it's 85. Like I said, I was pretty rowdy, and I married a girl from out at Jacksonport.
Now, pretty rowdy is not the right way to say it.
Well, I was bad.
Okay. All right. You had some. You
Had some
problems.
issues. Had some issues. Sure did. I don't care to talk about it. I was an alcoholic. 28 years of my life I drank.
And to this day, a recovering
I've
alcoholic.
been
right?
sober 30 years this December. It'll be 30 years.
Just make it through today, sir.
Yeah. But after I got saved and started going to church, then when I retired, God called me to preach. And I said, Lord, I'm too old. I'm 65 years old. And you know God, how God works. He told me, he said, people don't believe God talks to you, but he does.
Amen.
He said Moses was 80 years old when I sent him after the children of Israel. And he wandered in the desert 40 years. That made him 120. So you're not too old. So I figured up the other day, I'm 71 years old, and if I live as long as Moses, I can preach 49 more years. And if God will allow me, I'm going to do that.
I have often thought about Moses, you know, and I knew his age. When God said that to him, you're going into Egypt.
Yeah.
I think to God, are you nuts? I mean, are you serious? You know, me? Just I cannot imagine. But you love doing this.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I do a lot of volunteer work, you know.
You do a ton of volunteer work. Yeah.
I'm in Kiwanis, and we do a lot of good things. And the
You
Cancer
can't say
Society-
no.
No, that's right. I've never learned to say no. Port Fest every year, I drive the train and haul people around at Port Fest. I do it at Depot Days. I do it at the art show.
Right.
You know, they got a train with a tractor, and I pull it around, and I just love doing things. You know, keeps me young.
All right, when we come back, I want to hear your actual testimony. I want to hear about getting saved
All right.
and all that stuff, but we're going to take a quick break. Well, you're watching Remember When here on Cable 15 TV, cable15tv.com, Facebook, wherever you get it. We appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. Be right back. Bud Black, along with David Black producing, and we're visiting with Jimmy Cooper on Remember When, and I certainly hope you're enjoying the program. We do this. Somebody just tuned in. They told me one time last month, I'm watching John Purdy, and said, why were you interviewing John Purdy? They weren't familiar with the show, and I said, we've been doing this for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so we have interviewed some great folks in Newport, and one of the sad but good parts is some have passed, like
right.
Wardell that we've had on this show. And it gives us a good video history of who we are and who we were. And I hope that, you know, like our little 2010 show that we produced,
Right.
Newport 2010, it's good for the community. And down through the years, some kid will walk into a library 50 years from now, and that DVD will be there. And he can look at it and say, my goodness, look at this, you know, 50, 55 years ago. here's what Newport was like. Here's what my hometown was like. So we've loved doing this. We're approaching our 25th year of doing this cable TV. It's amazing.
I remember when you started.
It is so hard to believe. It just. But anyway, this is about you, not about us, and so I want to hear your personal testimony that you give to folks out there. How God touched your life.
When I fill in a lot of churches, small churches that don't have pastors, and I give my testimony. As I said earlier, I had a problem with alcohol for many years, and when I got saved, God took all that away from me. He took the desire that right now, today, it's been almost 30 years, and I don't even think about it anymore. But God can make so much of a difference in a person's life. That's the reason that I try to help so many drug addicts. I do a drug rehab meeting at my church on Thursday night, every Thursday night. And I'll have 15, 18, sometimes 10, 12 people show up. But when God gets a hold of you, or when he got a hold of me, he made a complete change in my life. I turned around. In 1984, I believe it was, I had my own business, but I was drinking every day. And lost my business, lost my home, lost everything. And that's when I started going to church, and I tell them at Jackson, I've been at Jacksonport Baptist Church for almost 30 years now, and I tell them that on the back pew, if they look in the pew in front of me, you can see my fingerprints in there where I gripped the front of that pew, back of that pew, and because God was dealing with me. And over the years, I've tried to do as much as I can to further God's word. Because without God, I wouldn't be here today. I would have drank myself to death probably today. But when God called me to preach, as I said earlier, I fought it for a year, and it was the most miserable year I ever spent in my life. And when I finally surrendered, it felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And today, as I do when I first got into Alcoholics Anonymous 30 years ago, they were meeting down in the old Gray building down in downtown. And I stayed in it for several years, and then after I got saved, I thought, well, I don't need this anymore. 7 years ago, I started doing the meeting at my church, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I hope and pray to God that I've helped some addicts. I do drug court. I go to drug court with Judge Harold Irwin, dear friend of mine.
He has a good line he uses at drug court about you. Mm-hmm. You might tell everybody.
Well, he uses them all the time. But I believe it was last week or week before last. He told there was about 10 or 12 of those addicts up there, and he was talking to them, and I'm sitting back in the courtroom, and he said, that man sitting right back there was in the top 10 drunks in Jackson County. And I said, wait a minute, Judge, it was top 5. But he said, look at him now. God saved him and made a preacher out of him. And Harold and I are dear friends. And I told him, I said, use me anytime you want to, brother.
My dear friend Billy Ed Morris, who was at Jacksonport Church and then over at my church, Emmanuel, for many years.
He was at Jacksonport 21 years.
Yeah, and said, and his testimony is, folks, he said, I can tell you about it because I've been at the bottom of that bottle.
Amen. I've been there.
He said, I've been in every bar, every honky-tonk in Jackson County and on the floor.
That's right.
And he said, so I feel like I can stand here at this podium and preach because I know what I'm talking about.
I think people, and I've got nothing against seminaries. I think there's some great preachers come out of seminaries, but I think people that have been where Billy Ed's been and where I've been, and my pastor at Jacksonport's an ex-addict and ex-alcoholic. Mm-hmm. We've been on both sides of it.
And when it comes from the heart,
That's right. And I can tell.
instead of school. Nothing against school.
No,
Of
that's
course,
right,
it's
that's
great
right,
to be
that's
schooled
right.
about the Bible and presentation and all that. But if you really, there's a lot of difference if you haven't experienced
Oh,
it. I think.
amen. And rehab is good for some folks, but you've got to get it up here first.
I have so many people that have told me, I have so many folks who are addicts tell me that they had to turn it over to God.
Yeah, you have to. You have to. Without God, I'd be drunk again. I guarantee you.
I have so many people, when the folks, what John 3:16,
I'll do a fantastic job.
got to turn it over to God.
That's right.
You can't turn
That's
it over to man. I mean, AA helps, and that, this helps and that helps, but you just cannot do it by yourself.
There's a young man in my family, and I won't mention any names, that has been through 12 rehabs. Went to California, went through a rehab. Came back to Newport, got him a job, bought him a car, was doing real good. And called me one night and he said, I'm drunk again. He said, I wish I could do what you did. And I said, son, you can if you'll get it in your head to do it. But you got to get in your head first. You got to want to.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to the bottom, there's only one place to go, and that's up. And I've been on the bottom.
But you have spent a vast part of your life now helping folks, as you said, even at work, when you're in the funeral business for 20 years. That's a time where you're there helping people.
That's right.
At a great time and need in their lives, and when they are hurting, when they are aching, and you have always found it within yourself since finding the Lord, to do things for people.
Amen.
And
Amen.
I have always enjoyed doing things for people. I've always been a guy who wanted to be there and wanted to help, and I think every community has to have those folks.
What people need to understand, Bud, is that you're never going to be able to repay God for what He does for you.
And that's the truth.
And no matter how.
And lots of folks, we just don't realize it.
Yeah,
At the time, you don't realize the blessings.
that's right.
And people tell me, Bud, aren't you so bad that you had a foot amputated? Don't you feel terrible about that? I said, no. I said, I'm glad I'm glad they have prosthetics.
Yeah.
That I can hobble around. Well, you don't walk as well as you used to. I certainly do not. But I'm still walking a little bit, And the old saying is absolutely true, Jim. You don't have to look far to find somebody in worse shape than you, so you better count your blessings.
That's right, count your blessings. I probably shouldn't say this, but the thing that's wrong with the world today is that people don't have a fear of God. They don't have a reverent fear of God. God talks about, the Bible talks about people fearing God being a loving God,
Right.
and He is a loving God, but He's also a wrathful God. If you look back, especially in the Old Testament, God used bad people to do good things.
And you and I were talking before we went on air. King David was talking about rowdy.
Yeah, he was. I believe David was worse than me. I never did kill anybody, but people don't fear God, and you've got to have a reverence. And God is a loving God, and God's gonna love everybody. We've got things going on in this world today that 30 years ago we would never thought of.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And but the people that are doing these things, you've got to love that person. You may not love what they're doing, but God loves everybody. And it's
Yeah, it's a tough concept.
it's a tough concept.
Yeah, it
but
really is.
You've got to have a reverent fear of God, and you've got to love everybody. Scripture says, love your neighbors, you love yourself.
Right.
Well, I like me. I'm pretty fond of me.
Yeah, I know. If you don't like yourself, it's hard to like anybody
So
else.
you've got to love everybody.
We're visiting with Jimmy Cooper here at Remember When on Cable 15. We're going to wrap it up. Be right back following this.
Jackson's Funeral Home and the Jackson family have been serving our friends and neighbors in Jackson County during some of the most difficult times of their lives for nearly 60 years. As the third generation of this family to own and operate Jackson's Funeral Homes, Jan, Rhett, and Jerry consider it the highest honor to be chosen to care for you and your family during times of need. We believe the highest standard of care is achieved when people are given the tools needed to make the most informed decision for the benefit of their family. For us, there's no greater honor than to care for our friends and our neighbors in their time of need. The Jackson's Funeral Homes, the 1900 block of Malcolm Avenue in Newport, phone number 870-523-5822.
Okay, tell me quickly about family and future and goals. Let's talk about family first.
Okay, I have a son. As I said earlier, I'm a Baptist preacher, and he's Church of Christ preacher.
Okay. All right.
Somebody asked me what we talk about when we get together, and I said, it's not religion.
That's something else, yeah.
And
Meet in the middle somewhere.
I've got a stepdaughter that I've had for over 30 years, so she belongs to me.
Okay.
She lives in Paragould, and of course I lost my wife 8 years ago. She passed away. And it's just me here, and the kid, my son lives in Strawberry, and like I said, my daughter lives in Paragould. Still got some relatives around.
What about the future? What are the goals for Jimmy Cooper at 71 years old? What do you want to do?
To make 81.
Well, that's a good 81 or 72.
Yeah, or 72. That's
Right
right.
now.
But I just want to keep on doing what I'm doing. You mentioned Billy Ed earlier, Billy Ed Morris, and he had a saying. So I was saved while Billy Ed was preacher at Jacksonville, and he had a saying. He said, "Keep on keeping on." And that's what I'm planning on doing. As long as God will allow me to speak, I'm going to preach His word.
Well, at 71 years old, God has given you the health, He's given you the energy, He's given you the platform, and the ability to do it.
And I'm 311. You know, He says 310. No, I promise you.
My dear friend, Coach Keedy, who just had open heart surgery as we were taping this about a week ago, but needed to have that bypass surgery done. Yeah. Always told me, he said, I always told God I wanted to make it to 70 years old. Well, this past June 30th, he turned 70. He said, I had a meeting with God the other day. I said, Lord, can we renegotiate this deal?
That's right.
That's
right.
But anyway, and as we're speaking, I hope Bill is doing much better.
I do. Bill's a dear friend of mine. He's
and he needed to have that surgery done, and I know he didn't want to, but the time had come. And I know he was takes a little time to recover.
Yeah.
After that, people don't just jump up and run around town, And so anyway, shout out to Coach Keedy. Hope everything is fine. Jim Cooper, my pleasure to have you here and talk about your life and your things that you do in the community. Kiwanis Club, before we go, I want to mention Kiwanis Club and all the great work that you guys do at Kiwanis.
18 years I've been in Kiwanis.
Okay, and I know you guys there are 2 or 3 projects every year that are big projects, and Kiwanis is deeply involved in those. And I know Kiwanis Club is like all civic clubs. You like to have more members.
Oh, I love to have. We're way down right now. When I got in the club 18 years ago, there was 52 members, and we're down to 18 right now.
See, and Lions Club, Rotary Club, always, and Kiwanis Club have been big civic clubs in Newport. So, how's one go about getting involved in one of the clubs?
Well, we meet at the country club on Wednesday at noon. Anybody's welcome to come, and we'll even feed you. Once. Yeah. And Lions Club, I think, meets on Thursday, and then Rotary on Friday at the same place over there. So, of course, we'd like for everybody to join the Kiwanis Club, but if they want the other ones, that's fine too.
If you're interested, I know everybody says they're so busy, but if you have a little bit of time, you're going to eat lunch on Wednesday anyway.
That's right.
Or Thursday or Friday. Join one of the civic clubs. I currently am not in one at this time, but I have been in the Kiwanis Club in years past.
And I believe your dad was a Kiwanian.
He was the president of the Kiwanis Club.
I've got that board that's got all of them past presidents on it. I've been president twice.
And Kenny and David and I all were inducted into the Kiwanis Club on the same day.
Yeah.
And
you don't show up.
well, just as they say, we've been busy.
Yeah.
I try not to eat lunch on Wednesday. Can you tell? It's not working, is it?
Yeah, it's not working.
Jimmy, thank you, sir.
Appreciate you, bud.
Jimmy Cooper, our friend here on Remember When. Appreciate you watching here on Cable 15. And watch us. You can spread the word that we're on cable15tv.com also. And David posted just a ton of stuff on Facebook that we produce. And we thank you for all the shout-outs. I know David had a real nice piece on Lindley. And the lady turned 100 years old, and getting a lot of comments about that, and we appreciate it. Anytime you say something to us, we say thank you, and you see Jimmy out and about doing his thing, you be sure and tell him that you saw him on Remember When. I'm Bud Black for David Black, Ben Black, and all our crew here at Cable 15 TV. Have a good day. Thank you.